Jimmy, I warned you not to experiment with that growth ray. It's turned you into a super menace, and now I must remove you from the Earth.
That's a clip from the 2008 animated series Batman the Brave and the Bold, a show specializing in connecting Batman to other lesser-known or Silver Age characters in a much lighter and more humorous tone. Hence, Superman dealing with one of Jimmy Olsen's many, many transformations. The fact that the show highlights the absurd is obvious. What may not be as obvious is that this clip is a near-perfect recreation of a Superman's Pal Jimmy Olsen comic cover, which itself is a recreation of a cover of a science fiction magazine. In a casual watch of Brave and the Bold, it can be easy to only see the series as a kid's show, a Batman for a younger audience, and on some level, it is. This is a series made for children to watch with their parents. I know, because the final episode shows Batmite trying to get the audience to stop watching to drop the rating so a new, more serious Batman series can follow.
Now, let's see. To do that, I'll need to add a love interest, give Batman an adorable kid, replace a favorite character with a different actor, and of course, hire Ted McGinley. This is going to be fun!
But I think that also highlights that there is something more to this show. That kind of metatextual humor isn't written for young audiences. It might go above the head of some adults, even. Brave and the Bold is more than just a kid's show. It's a marvel of metatextuality and a love letter to the sillier side of comics that sometimes is lost in the transition to a big screen movie adaptation or a more serious animation. Created by James Tucker and Michael Jelenic, Batman the Brave and the Bold ran 3 seasons in episodes which varied in tone a great deal. Often bright and comedic with a focus on action, the series also dealt with death, torture, and grief in a surprising amount of episodes, owing partially to the creators' desire to handle Batman in a way that hadn't been done. To quote one of the episode directors, Ben Jones, "I always liked seeing new interpretations. I have all the previous versions of Batman on DVD already, so I don't see the point in trying to rehash that. And there's so much that hasn't been done with it. So many versions of Batman have been done in the comic books that haven't had a chance to shine in animation. And as far as doing a darker Batman, I think you're shooting yourself in the foot because you have to compete with versions that have already been done right here at Warner Bros. It made sense to do something new because everybody had worked on the old stuff." Batman had existed in many serious forms just prior to this, from the grounded Nolan films to the psychological and dramatic 90s animated series. Batman was a serious character. So a new direction ended up being an older direction. Looking back to the comics, the creators turned to the art of Dick Sprang, longtime Batman artist from the early days of the comics, creating a different and yet familiar style. They also ended up drawing on comic stories that had never been told in other genres. Often this led to stories based on Silver Age stories, but also some of the unusual parts of comics history, like the sacrifice of the Doom Patrol at the end of their comic run. Brave and the Bold has become a unique space in the industry for its dedication to the history of comics. Not just the highlights or the serious moments, the history that mixes silly, strange, and yes, even serious. Comics, movies, and other cartoons. This obviously doesn't create an unbiased representation of Batman, but it does make for a uniquely honest and loving homage to the history of Batman and DC. Take that Superman episode, for example. This episode, Battle of the Superheroes, covers the familiar ground of red kryptonite turning Superman evil. And this series calls for Batman to stop the Man of Steel, leading to references to the Dark Knight Returns comic. However, the episode features more than this surface borrowing or one cover reference. There are a large handful of specific covers recreated. This episode celebrates the odd moments in Superman's history, creating a beautiful transformation of the comic to the screen, but also more than that. Longtime comics fans or internet users may have stumbled upon the Super Dickery blog, a collection of strange comics with Superman behaving like an ass to his close friends and allies. This is a collection of Silver Age comic covers that at the time functioned a lot like clickbait articles or thumbnails act now, grabbing attention. At the time, comics used weird, out-of-character Superman to grab interest, get people to buy comics. The show now uses those moments to show when Superman is behaving out of character. The show repurposes these references into a new story, all with the aim of capturing the feeling of the Silver Age comics. Thus, the show uses the techniques of a transformation to make something closer to an intersection. While only some of the characters are metatextually aware, such as Batmite or character you've definitely heard of, Ambush Bug, the whole show demonstrates a metatextual awareness of its history, expectations, styles, and so much more. Another great example from this episode. In a brief moment, Jimmy Olsen runs through almost all of the strange transformations the character went through in his own comic series.
Aw, help!
Mr. Mixia's Pitlick.
Superman and Batman! What fun!
Don't worry, I just need to trick him into saying his name backwards.
Brave and the Bold writers and directors know the history of the comics and include these unusual references that a more serious show would struggle to include while maintaining its tone. This show created its own space in the adaptation market by respecting what came before it, but not trying to recreate what had worked in adaptation before it. Superheroes that were unknown, plot lines that were unknown, all in a style that imitated classic comics and made the world of comics fun and action-packed, not serious and important. In a kind of backwards way, the show's almost the most academic of the Batman adaptations, rather than the most critical. There's no lack of love, effort, or creativity, but all for an informed audience, one that knew the comics or wanted to learn, rather than something to show the world that comics were more than just comics. This lends itself to comedy, but it doesn't only lend itself to that. Some of the episodes are quite serious, even as they maintain the classic tone and style of the show. As mentioned earlier, there's a whole episode dedicated to the Doom Patrol, a DC superhero team that came out a few months before the X-Men over at Marvel. The team actually dealt with some similar emotional and dramatic tones as the X-Men, but never reached the same level of popularity. When the series ended initially, the characters sacrificed themselves to save a small fishing village. The Batman Brave and the Bold episode covers the same issue, and the story ends the same. Heroic sacrifice of the team.
I guess you have your answer, General.
Fire away! So be it!
No!
This show could balance a more serious episode, and there are multiple deaths buried in this comedic action series. This is all part of recognizing comics history. Not all comics end well, and even older comics tackled heavier issues and realities. Perhaps the best example of this is one of the most popular episodes from the series, Chill of the Night. Chill of the Night pays homage to comics history in many of the previously discussed ways. The episode is loosely based on a few comics, most specifically issue 47, way back in 1948, in which the story centers on Batman finally catching up to the man who killed his parents, Joe Chill. The show also recreates some panels and moments from that comic directly, some almost exactly.
How do you know this? How could you possibly?
I know because I watched it happen. I know because I am the son of the man you murdered. I am Bruce Wayne.
And others with changes like Batman's greatest foes taking revenge on Chill for creating Batman rather than his own henchmen.
What's funny?
You're saying we owe Batman's existence to you? That's a killer!
This episode manages the same style and tone, but with a more psychological study of character and more serious moments. But it also adapts more than just the comic, creating one of the most literarily dense episodes of any Batman series, partially through the choice of actors providing voices. Voice actors make a huge difference to any animated project. With casting and voice direction by the always fabulous Andrea Romano, Brave and the Bold favored comedic actors over more dramatic ones of previous shows. Batman is voiced by Diedrich Bader, best known for comedic acting and with a wide range. In an interview, Bader commented on the type of show and actors being brought in. This is Batman with a sense of humor. Now, it's dry and wry and ironic, but it's got comedy in it that is genuinely funny, not really dark. The guest stars are generally comedic guest stars, like Tom Kenny plays Plastic Man, John DiMaggio is there as Aquaman. Guys that are really, genuinely funny. It's not a comedy show, it's an action show, but it's an action show with genuine laughs in it. That's kind of what's exciting about it. Once again, bringing something new to the adaptation space, the show used comedic guest stars or even ones with history in other DC work to create a style that was different from the Batman of the times. John Wesley Shipp played the Flash in a 1990 live-action The Flash series and returns as Flash villain Professor Zoom in the animated series. And this happened with many different voices and characters, particularly in Chill of the Night. A key facet of Chill of the Night is the framing narrative of the story. The story begins with the Phantom Stranger and the Spectre creating a bet over Batman's soul. How the hero deals with Chill will inform the rest of his life. If Batman kills Chill, then the Spectre wins, and Batman becomes an agent of vengeance. If he spares him, Phantom Stranger wins, and Batman will continue as the hero we know. Not only does this establish the stakes of this critical moment for any member of the audience, young or old, but the choice of voice actors cements a deeper depth to the episode. Kevin Conroy, voice of Batman from the extremely popular Batman the Animated Series, voices Phantom Stranger, pushing for Batman's humanity. While the voice of the Joker from the same series, Mark Hamill, voices the Spectre. Voices of characters from the history of not only the comics, but the animation adaptations themselves represent the psychological aspects battling in the mind of this new Batman. A literal recreation of the impact of the previous adaptations on new works. Not only that, but Bruce witnesses a flashback to his parents in another comics reference. And in this section, Bruce's parents are voiced by Adam West and Julie Newmar, Batman and one of the actors portraying Catwoman in the 60s series. The episode is drenched in history, fittingly in an episode that is itself dedicated to how Batman's history influences his decisions. The history of adaptation pushes the new show forward, just as the history of the character pushes him forward to a climax where Bruce decides that the soul of Bruce Wayne is more important to protect than the identity of Batman.
He knows who you are. If this man lives, Batman dies.
Batman may die, but Bruce Wayne... never.
It's a brilliant and analytical piece written by some of the makers of that history. Paul Dini of the 90s animated series and Bob Kane, one of the creators of Batman. History really is the key when it comes to Batman Brave and the Bold. Everything is an adaptation, an homage, a reference from the title of the series to the actors to the style, all in the name of bringing something new to the adaptation space. That's what makes this series so special. So many adaptations either recreate without making it new or iterate on what already exists, only borrowing. That isn't a bad thing. The animated series created some of the best changes to the Batman canon in a long time, and that only happened because the show aimed to do something new. New characters, new backstories, new ways of exploring those aspects that changed the way a generation saw Batman. The same is true of many other series and movies aiming to bring legitimacy to comics. But when you try to show that legitimacy, that critical eye, that something new, you inevitably leave some things behind. Sometimes you need an adaptation that makes something new by respecting the history. All of it. Brave and the Bold respects the comics, the characters, other adaptations. Comics can be more than just comics, but they can also be silly, strange, artistic, colorful, and even childish. Batman Brave and the Bold is not meant to be a critical darling. And the creators have said as much in interviews. According to James Tucker, I worked with the animated series executive producer Bruce Timm for 12 years. To me, Batman the Animated Series is hallowed ground. That's not something I wanted to follow in or to be in the shadow of, but this is such a different flavor. The Brave and the Bold is not trying to be dark or sophisticated. But even if the show wasn't made to impress smart people, it was still made by smart people who knew the history of the character and how interpretations can be different but still valid. And I respect a creative team that has respect for its history and the fans who love that history. Batman Brave and the Bold loves its history and uses that to create something new in adaptation. And that may not make it the best adaptation, but it did bring a new kind of maturity to the adaptations. The maturity of being able to look back at the sillier parts of your history and laugh, not try to hide it away.